Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin is playing racist immigration politics with the state budget. Chris Graham, Augusta Free Press here. So Youngkin is trying to give, it appears, his Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears an early Christmas present. It generated controversy over immigration to use in her 2025 gubernatorial campaign. We're nowhere near a border, as you know, anybody who has access to a map would know. But the Republican governor, with no political future, it must be pointed out, rolled out on Thursday what his office called a no sanctuary cities budget proposal that would withhold funding from localities that purport to be sanctuary cities, requiring local police to fully comply with the feds on immigration issues at risk of losing state funding. Doing what these people do, Youngkin, in a press conference on Thursday, hyped the arrest of a Honduran immigrant on rape charges in Fairfax County in November, blaming the county's sanctuary policies that enabled the criminal to be released back on the streets without notifying ICE. That was a quote there. She was raped, he says, by an illegal immigrant who had a criminal history that extended so deep and so far back. Now, this ignores the obvious with that particular story that the alleged perpetrator was released after serving half of a 50-day sentence on an indecent exposure conviction because our jails are overcrowded, which isn't an immigration problem. It's a maybe we over incarcerate problem. Okay. Let's just say that right off the top, making everything that ails society about immigration, our term limited governor is obviously not going to get anywhere with the Virginia General Assembly, which is controlled by Democrats. This is a quote from State Senator Scott Survell from Fairfax County, the Senate Majority Leader. Given the fact that governors already politicized this problem, that's not going to do anything to help get anything passed. If he wants to have real dialogue about it, he ought to turn down the temperature and have real dialogue. Hey, go figure about that. He doesn't seem to realize yet, this Youngkin fellow, that he is a lame duck and also that he's a lame duck who's working against the other party and he needs to negotiate. He failed last year, for example, with the Arlington Sports Arena to do that, talking trash and sinking his own proposal there. And we know what he's doing here. Now, we know, though, that he doesn't really want dialogue. He doesn't want to get anything passed. In fact, he would, he'd probably sink his own bill if it was about to get passed. Because this is a play from the Republican playbook. We saw this earlier this year when the Senate spent months crafting a bipartisan proposal to deal with the immigration problem at our actual border in the Southwest. And then Republicans sank the deal that they themselves had helped negotiate because if you solve the problem, you can't run on the problem that you're talking about being there. So they're just trying to create controversy with immigration so they can get votes, just like Donald Trump is doing now with his squawking about how he's going to deport millions of illegal immigrants and saying that they're all murderers and rapists because that's what appeals to white voters, being told that people with brown skin are all criminals. Now, here's a quote from Sophia Gregg from the ACLU of Virginia. She's a senior immigrants' rights attorney. The Youngkin administration's proposal to force Virginia police to do the federal government's job at Virginians' expense doesn't stand a chance in a state with such a long history of valuing immigrants. With more than 1 million immigrants living in the Commonwealth today, more than 75% living here for longer than a decade, it's clear that Governor Youngkin's proposal is simple fear-mongering, divorced from the reality of who Virginians are today. Go figure there. Another case in point to that end, there's this quote in a press release that the governor's office is attributed to the guy who passed himself off, you might remember this, as a moderate when he ran for governor in 2021 because he wore a red vest. Here's a quote: criminals who were in the United States illegally will be turned over to ICE. We must stop the cycle of violence and crime that is being enabled by some local governments. Virginia is not a sanctuary state. We must be clear that we will not allow localities to become sanctuary cities. If local governments turn their backs on their citizens in order to pander to pro-illegal immigrant groups, we will cut off their funding. No, you won't. Earle-Sears, the lieutenant governor, who is going to be the Republican candidate for governor in 2025 after a deal made with Jason Miyares, the attorney general. They're not going to have a contest next year, and Earle-Sears will get the nomination as a result for herself. Now, she's herself a brown-skinned Jamaican immigrant. Came here when she was 6 years old. She's leaning hard into this strategy. This is one of those things. My father and I had to file documents and wait to be granted permission to enter the United States under Governor Youngkin's leadership. Virginia stands firm. We are not a sanctuary state. Point out that she immigrated here again at the age of 6. She didn't have to sign any documents. Her father presumably would have had to, but not herself. So don't take credit for that when you didn't do it. Continuing with Earl-Sears, any local official who instructs law enforcement to defy efforts to keep Virginians safe abandons their duty and breaks the trust of the people they swore to protect. The rule of law is not negotiable. It is the foundation of our safety, our freedom, and the promise of opportunity that defines America. Now, there's another immigrant perspective that I'd like to share here. It's from Nirbeer Rodriguez, who has lived in Fairfax County for 17 years and was instrumental in the development of the county's public trust and confidentiality policy. It's been shortened to be called the trust policy. Rodriguez is a father of three who owns a landscaping and gardening business with 6 employees. And it says here he's enjoyed living in Virginia these past 17 plus years, raising his children and growing his economy. With this proposal, he says, to end these programs, I feel unsafe and afraid, knowing that I may be at risk of deportation and that my family may be separated. We do not want these types of racist laws in our state, since what they do is generate hatred for our communities, seek to erode our strength as workers, and dilute the economic contributions that our families make to this area, and to the state, and to this nation. We can also turn to Luis Aguilar, the Virginia director of CASA, which is an immigrant advocacy organization with its roots in fighting U.S. efforts to destabilize Latin America politically, which is a direct cause of the influx of immigrants coming north to escape political violence. Yes, there is a you broke it, you bought it aspect to all this. Aguilar said this: Governor's Youngkin proposal puts lives at risk. How can we expect anyone, immigrant or otherwise, to reach out to law enforcement in times of need when they fear deportation or discrimination? Trust is the foundation of any safe community. Without it, victims of crimes will remain silent and witnesses will turn away, leaving dangerous situations unreported and unaddressed. I want to give you one more quote from Aguilar. He had a lot to say about this and a lot that I think is very important to say about this. Governor Youngkin's budget plan does not protect Virginians. It divides us. It pits community members against one another, driving a wedge between law enforcement and the very people who contribute to making our state great. It punishes cities for supporting immigrant families and breeds an atmosphere of fear. CASA stands with Virginia's immigrant communities and calls on the governor to reconsider this dangerous proposal.